record now. Otherwise, it just would have, cut that off. Oh, let me find my, where am I? Hello. Hey, all right. Uh, all right. There's a lot here. That's why I want to discuss it. We've got 15 minutes. Um, I love that guy from San Francisco, the guy who was the mayor of San Francisco forever. He's awesome. Definitely worked and did his job for his city, that's for sure. Okay. I guess one of the big things would be, and then I'll say thoughts about this. I don't want to decide where it has to go, but I will say this. We've been talking about this every single class period, right? Whatever it applies to. Diversity. So multimodal transportation options, more successful. The more diverse the transportation system is, the more successful it is, the more needs it meets on so many different levels. The same is true with the river, right? We talked about that. You can't just pull certain components out of a river, the more diverse. Same is true with human society, right? So this is a general theme here in the universe that seems to really be important and applies directly, I think, to our the complete way that we are now looking at transportation in 2021, multimodal. So, all right, let me get some blood. Oh, there's a little more light. My ginger skin is burning from the overcast day. All right, so what do you think? What stands out in this to you? There's a lot of stuff I think is really cool. What do you think?
I think it's just kind of sad to see just how much a lot of places follow the trend of, hey, it makes more money for us, and so screw everyone else. We don't give a crap about you.
Yeah, I guess my uncensored thought of that is how pathetic, right? Like if that's really just it, and people aren't a consideration, our lives aren't a consideration, our quality of life. There's a lot of things to consider. So yeah, bottom line, it's a buck. We're gonna do it. Next, right? Okay, good. What else?
Just thought it was interesting how many homes and businesses and churches and communities got destroyed, and like it was a brutal period for a ton of people. And at least until now, I've never really heard or even thought about that. And for a lot of people, that was an extremely traumatic time in their life. So thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, a couple things there. One would be you don't hear about this much. And again, it's the dominant culture piece, or at least from a functionalist perspective. Well, it's okay. This is progress. What happens in the meantime, though, right, is that all sorts of particular communities get destroyed. And oftentimes they are poor communities, they are communities of color, people living in urban areas. And it's, yeah, you ripped out all of these really important uh, institutions in their immediate neighborhoods and in the places where they live and where they work, and literally destroy them. And the other, I think, is that we don't hear about this much. And I know I mentioned that, but just so what's the cultural loss here? And why not? Like, why, what's with this? And so I said this to Julie. I said beforehand, I went to go to the bathroom. She's upstairs doing artwork. And I said, hey, I love showing this to my students because historical context. And I talked about that at the beginning of this class. Over here is the past, here is nowish, 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 and here's the future. We absolutely, I feel like, are undereducated about the past, which is really, really, really important for understanding the now. So yeah, especially, right? Because we're coming back to stuff. We're not really so like amazingly bold in creating new things so much as we're returning back to the stuff that was good from before, that worked. So yeah, what were those social conditions that allowed for that, and how do we not let that happen again when we get advances with transportation that works for people and that's safe or that's clean or that makes a city more beautiful? Or there's a lot of considerations with transportation, right? Proves how easily people are manipulated. They'll do anything for money. Sure. Never occurred to me that highways were so political. Who was it the Secretary of War or Secretary of State or somebody that was like from GM? Like the first time I saw this documentary like 10 years ago, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I guess I didn't realize how, yeah, national security, the head of national security is GM deciding that roads are the way to, like, what? Qualifications, people. Well, at that time, that guy's qualified, right? He's powerful and rich and white and connected. I don't know, maybe he knew a lot about national security, but he's not a military guy. So again, I've watched this a dozen times, mind blowing. So yeah, that would be the very definition of politics. Somebody said, I always wondered why European and United States differed quality public transportation. Absolutely. Yeah, Europe did not destroy all of that. And of course, there are reasons for this, right? Which we'll get to. Okay, so good. What else stands out to you? Sorry, one thing leads to another with this, but it's really good for being oh, and by the way, right? I know a lot of you are thinking of this, so I'm happy to see your faces when I say kind of sexy saxophone music for a transportation documentary. I mean, a little sultry for talking about, but maybe that's how we need to do it, right? It's just, make light rail just as sexy as we make our cars, because obviously that's an approach with this whole thing. So yeah, we need an advertisement for light rail that's all like, I'm sorry. The soundtrack to this is like, I think there's a little disconnect, but maybe not. All right, what else? What stands out to you?
Not to get all preachy, but I think this just kind of highlights how we need to pay more attention to like our local elections, because a lot of the people who make these decisions are elected officials, and like we need to, and like it sucks, it's a lot of work to like look into everybody who's running for certain positions, but it just shows that like, because like you can prevent stuff like this if we pay more attention to who we're electing.
Yeah, and bless those activists, or good for those activists who are in every community, who are out there marching, who are out there getting together, who are out there trying to, this guy doing 16 years of research to make a point that this is wrong, and not good for people and whatever that is. So yeah, collective action, that's a huge piece of sociology. Many of our rights would be eroded already if it wasn't for or you wouldn't just have attained them in the first place if it wasn't for collective action. And that doesn't mean you're like duct taping yourself to a bulldozer or chaining yourself to a tree. That's like what institutions want you to think of as environmental action. But environmental action is just showing up. It's calling people, it's voting for people on a local level and on a state level, and doing things on your campus. It's making sure that you get composting so there's no food waste on campus, so that starting here, we walk the talk. Our behavior is sustainable if that's our goal. So yeah, all sorts of ways. Good, absolutely. Somebody put, why don't we have a train along I-25 yet? It's simple. Julie also said you could just do this, pretty easy. I mean, yeah, by the time they build the next 3 lanes, that many more people have moved to Colorado. It's kind of, at a certain point, already, we're past the point where it makes any sense to me, at least. Ballots for Fort Collins local elections just started going out. Everyone make sure your registration is up to date. If your address is in Fort Collins and you can decide, there are thousands of you at CSU. Like, determine the fate of Fort Collins. I love it. I wish the fate of Fort Collins was in 18 to like 26-year-olds' hands and minds. So make that a reality. Yeah, if you've got an address here, do it. Yeah, especially the Hughes thing is a big deal. And it directly relates to transportation, because there ain't no more room for more apartments, for more cars, for more, what would that look like? Actually, that's one of the biggest things about the Hughes thing to me, is it seems just it's not possible infrastructure wise with traffic concerns. But anyway, another issue. All right, what else stands out about this documentary? I love it. I love this thing.
Something that stood out to me is, I guess I didn't realize how much like the transportation industry contributed to like the speed of our society. Like, I feel like everything, we like go 100 million miles an hour like all the time, and I think like the highway system totally perpetuated that. I remember like the San Francisco guys like, why can't you just like enjoy the view of going downtown? And like, I think that's so true. So like, and I especially think that like other places like Europe and everything like that, they like appreciate, they don't pay as much attention to like speeding up life as much as we do. And so that was something that stood out to me.
Yeah, he had a lot of good concerns about the rights and beauty of people living in a city. What does that look like? And just like, does it get to a certain point? So he's really considering things on many levels. And again, I think this is somewhat politics as usual. The guy's like, why do you hate cars? It's like, just stop already, right? Like, you know, they didn't really have any good arguments. There's a lot of straw man arguments or straw person arguments, and a lot of sort of fallacious reasoning. This guy's actually coming to testify, not for sort of theatrics, but because he cares about his city and he's very involved. Yeah, good considerations. What else stands out?
Kind of going off what Riley said, like in the beginning of it, I kind of noticed how they were just the people were talking about how much being on buses was like a part of their lives, like a social interaction. They would like talk to each other and play games and stuff. And now, like, if I take the bus to school, like everybody has their music in and everybody's looking down at their phone. And it's just like totally changed the way society interacts. At least that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and look, not all change is fabulous, right? And that is called building social capital. So by being on those trolleys, you know, you're eating, you're playing cards, you're talking to people, like that's called social capital. You're building connections within your community that makes all of that even more valuable, and makes transportation more valuable as well. Yeah, I think it used to be way different even 15, 20 years ago when you get to a restaurant and people, or 20 years ago, people didn't really have cell phones and you just sat there. And if you got there 5 minutes early, you were like alone with your thoughts. I do not think that we are alone with our thoughts in the present moment very often. And, you know, not to get super hippie or spiritual, which I don't think it is, to have people actually have moments, which these like forms of transportation provided for a community, which I think, yeah, is really cool. And what did it take? About 14 years for them to completely dismantle public transportation in this country. I think you know, that's about the math. You could look at the year span that they were talking about, but to me, to destroy public transportation and replace it with something totally different, more expensive, dirtier, right? Wow, that's not a long period of time. And I think they made a point. What did they do with the trolley cars that is very Simpsons, which is very American? Does anybody remember? Like
Was
once
it the cars or the buses that they burned?
the trolleys that they burned, that's what they were burning. And I mean, gorgeous. Can you think, if you've been on the trolley here in Fort Collins, they're amazing. Like the woodworking is amazing. Each one of those would have been worth like tens of thousands of dollars nowadays. But they just put a kerosene on them and they lit them all on fire. Why? We're talking about sociology here, right? Human behavior, intention. Why? Money, for sure, because they're going to replace the transportation system, but there's something else. Sort of a historical American.
It permanently gets rid of them. It sort of takes it out of people's mind. You can't put a burned out wreck in a museum as effectively as you could a full-on.
Yep. Great, Samuel. And also I see here from Monica, symbolically burn the bridges of the past. Absolutely. You think you're going to get your trolleys back? No, son, you're not. We're burning them. But the history of America is like burning stuff, burning buildings down, burning crosses, burning. It's like very heavy on the symbolism of this is done. Like this is done. And don't get all weepy about it because it's over. Otherwise, why exactly? Somebody put like salvage for the parts. There's tons of brass in those trolley cars and metal. And like I said, like oak, wood, amazing wood that doesn't exist anymore. Or in some of the ways that those beams are cut, just like in old houses. So yeah, a lot of value, but they were burying that one, right? Done. Good. What else stands out about this?
I feel like it was really interesting just throughout the whole thing, just like the lack of input that it seemed like just the American people had in everything. I think we kind of touched on that earlier, but that really like hit hard, especially with like the burning the trolleys thing. Like, I don't know, it just seems like one of those things where it seems like, oh yeah, sure, like the people are the ones who drive you know, what's going on with transportation, but really it just kind of seemed like things are just kind of like thrown at us and we just kind of have to do what the system is, like no matter what your intentions are, even if you're like, oh wait, I still want to take the trolley, like they're burning them, too bad. Like,
yeah, we're gonna tell you what you want. This
Yeah.
is what you want. This is what you need, and then we're gonna advertise and tell you about it and justify it, and And you can even sue. And then you would hope that we would have checks and balances, which would take care of it. And those fines were like what, $1, $10, like, so the idea that you can't have a monopoly, that's kind of, you know, that's shooting that down or that's throwing that out. And yeah, input by the people who are the people who ride it. The people who ride it know that it's dirty. The people who were like still riding behind these buses knew that it was dirty. And the guy's testifying in court, and he's like, actually, that's not a problem at all. And then you have a little black and white movie where a teacher gets up and is like, think of the children, right? Which is like that classic Simpsons thing. Won't somebody think of the children? So if you look at all the ways that they went about, that's social control. And we talk about that in sociology as well, like attempts to regulate your thoughts and behavior, and in ways there are no decisions. And then we know that this isn't fake, right? Because they interviewed people. One of the people, maybe the saltiest, most evil guy, maybe like the real Mr. Burns. Did you see that guy? What did he have to say? Does anybody remember? Because that stands out to me.
Are you talking about the guy who said, who pointed at the activists and said, you're trying to dismantle Ford, GM, and you're trying to...
No, the old guy's in the chair. And yeah, they fire the old people first, right? I'm old. We fired the old people, even when I was just a little younger and still old. And we cut their heads off. And you bet we fired them. And that's what you do. And like, if you think that this is made up, this is a guy who is doing it and still proud of it. And yeah, I'm glad he's not my grandpa. Good gracious. I mean, he was just proud to hurt those people's lives. Like, ugh, it's tough. All right. It's 1:45. I want to continue this discussion because I don't think that we've really touched upon everything. I didn't release any questions today, so don't worry about it. There's a bunch of questions that I will ask. Where are we? Well, maybe I'll go in and open some up just to make sure that I've got ones open for Tuesday ahead of time. So check that out. And I don't think anything else. Read chapter 7 on transportation. I'll start lecturing on transportation. Any questions before we end this today for today? Anything? Nope. All right. Well, be good people, do good things, and stay safe and mask up. And yeah, just do your part to get us back where things are awesome. Yeah. All right. Take care. Peace, everybody. Reach out if you need anything for the class. Oh, Obi-Wan Brennan. That's right. From a certain point of view.